What's up and welcome back? I'm John Stark from MyMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic. And this is Supacell, Season 1. The whole thing. I did the whole thing for you. I'm trying to do this a little bit more so that way I can get the whole thing out. And I'm breaking my habit of not binge watching so that way I can review the context of a season. There's 6 episodes of this. It's on Netflix and has audio description provided by Adrenaline Studios, which I feel like I'm not familiar with. Possibly, maybe they've done like one thing, but as far as proliferation in the industry, I'm not as familiar with Adrenaline. Um, so it was interesting to hear what they had to say, and it was interesting to see what Supercell was about. Uh, Supercell is one of those shows that is following in this long line of we have superheroes. What do we do with them? And we want to do stuff other than just Marvel and DC. So what do we do? And I know people have been scouring, and that's how we got stuff like The Boys, is that people are looking through comics and The Sandman and Watchmen, and people are like trying to find these things that are not just Batman, Superman, Iron Man, you know what I'm saying? Like the big ones. They're trying to find these other comics. And other people are just kind of writing superhero stories, you know, and have been for quite some time. Stories where somebody gets a power and has some sort of experience. And there are tons of films. There's Chronicle, there's Slight. There's a whole bunch of films where you see somebody like this. TV shows like Raising Dion um, comes to mind. Just little things along the way. And now we have Supercell. What Supercell basically is British. First thing you need to know is British. Very British. The whole cast is British. If you took the powers out, it would be a really weird show, actually, because then it would be like, why are they being watched? Um, but it would, they'd have to completely change that thing because then it wouldn't make any sense. It would be sort of like about just a cast of black British actors sort of living a traditional gangish lifestyle, hoodlum lifestyle in London. But when you start giving people who live in and around this culture powers, how does that change the story? And then when you start having them watched by some sort of secretive agency, secret agency type of thing, how does that change the story when there's this other mystery to it all? So we're introduced to 5 different people who have 5 different powers and also are 5 different personalities. Um, and over the course of the first season, they will come together. Uh, Bit by bit, their stories will intertwine and it'll cause them to pull together, even though like at least one of them is like basically the leader of a gang. Another guy is just trying to, do his do the best job he can for his fiance. Like they're like different stories, and you'll follow them as the show goes along. We have one guy who, Michael, I do remember his name. It's funny that I remember Michael. Some of these names are pretty cool, and I remembered Michael. Uh, he has time travel powers. He can stop time, or slow time or whatever, but he can jump in the past or to the future. And the season 1 kind of ends with I'm gonna go to the future and gather more information. Okay, hopefully you come back and maybe the show picks up a season 2. Otherwise, cool. And the rest of them all have different powers like strength and telekinesis, uh, invisibility, and just like really sort of basic powers, like, yeah, 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 okay, uh-huh. Like these are these are the powers that they have, or okay, we've formed the Avengers. And they use their powers to like within their stories. Um, the fact that the gang leader guy is given the power of invisibility really helps him in his once he learns how to control his power and be able to turn it on and off. Totally benefits him. Multiple situations in which that dude being invisible, absolutely, he's like, listen, I got the best power for who I am as a person. Um, and meanwhile, some of the others, it's like a little bit less obvious why they should have that power. Like the guy who time travels, it's a little bit less obvious why. Or super speed, for example. That guy is a little bit less obvious. But there's clear racial division here. It focuses on that. Basically, your main cast is black. And while it doesn't say, there was a time when they talked about the people who are watching them, the mysterious group that's watching them, and like they have monitors and they have people like in a room watching them, and they did say it was a mostly white group of people, so it's possible that they have some people of some ethnicities in there watching them, so that's a thing. Um, but it's an interesting setup because of that, because of the it has very clear thoughts about class and racial divide. And it reminded me a lot of They Clone Tyrone, in that sort of feeling of, are you guys watching these people live in this like weird gangland poverty situation as some sort of like an experiment? Is that what we're doing? Is that what Supercell is? Um, there are some really uncomfortable moments. There's a scene where one of the characters goes and visits his mom, and he's like, I need to stay here for a little while, and they're obviously estranged. And she's like, no, you can't, because she lives with a racist now, basically. And he's like, you why are you okay with living with a racist? Like, why are you okay with living with somebody like that? So um yeah. And she seems like really nervous and scared that he's even there. Like, what would happen should the husband return? It's just like, he shouldn't have to feel that. It's But those things kind of intertwine throughout this plot, which really does kind of put gang versus gang. It's sort of like center stage. Um, it was interesting. We've seen a lot of things that take superhero stuff and twist it and make something interesting out of it. I Am a Virgo did an excellent job of that last year for Amazon. This keeps it mostly serious. It's just not fun. It's a dark series, and I don't mean that the way that sounds terrible. No, it's a dark series in that, like, like when you get a power and you're like, oh my God, I have a power. This is the greatest day of my life. It never feels like that for anybody. It always feels like, I have a power. Damn. Shit. What am I going to do with this? I don't know. Something terrible has happened to me. Nobody's ever exuberant about their power. Nobody's ever like, oh my God, I can run really fast. I'm going to run all over the place. You know? I feel like we need a little bit of that. And I know this series is really trying to hit like a serious tone, but it's really hard to do that when you also have superpowers. It's really hard to do that when you're telling me none of these people want to remotely have fun / exploit their powers that way, and we can't have a single like lighter moment in this show where where one of them is doing something just for themselves that isn't tied to this weird plot. It just kind of feels like everything is depressing and dark and sad, and we added powers into it, and everything stayed depressing, dark, and sad. That's kind of the thing I didn't like about Supercell. I mean, I think there's a story here, but I think there's a story that could be told with or without the powers. to be totally honest. Nobody had powers and they cloned Tyrone, and even with the government watching these guys and having a vested interest, basically this could have been they cloned Tyrone the series, and you could have done something that way. I don't know that they did enough to convince me that they needed powers. Nobody seems to want them. I mean, the person who makes the best use out of them is the gang lord, and he uses them mostly to gain power as a as the leader of a gang, to kill off his rivals or to steal some drugs. It's like nobody has anything like remotely like what would you do with your power? Really? That's it? That's what you would do with it? We have just so much content out there now in terms of mixing in superhero stuff that we're going to get content that just isn't great. We're going to get content like uh, it, it's a series that Code 8 that's on Netflix. The movie series that's on Code. It's not great. It's not a great series. Um, and an exploration of characters that are interesting, but maybe not the exploration of superpowers that are interesting. By using superpowers that are really obvious and well known, too, it's like there's even more reason to do it because you like when you get a group of people, like normal people, regular people, doesn't matter any racial makeup of people. I'm not saying it's like a white people thing. I know I'm a white critic talking about like a mostly black show, but it has nothing to do with their race. To get a group of black people together, ask them what would you do, what superpower, what would you do with your superpower? They're gonna have an answer. Apparently, nobody in this show really has an answer. It's like, and it's like they're just stuck in this mood. They're just stuck in this theme for the show. It's like we're just gonna do this, and I feel like no matter what show you're in, if you give somebody a cool power, they're gonna use it for something. They're gonna do something silly or cool or just for themselves with it, just to see that they can. Um, you know, like the kid that runs fast might run, see if he can run on water or something. Like try to run across a lake. Like they're not testing the limits of their powers. They're not doing anything that you would normally see in a series. They just sort of have powers. But why? And how does this help the series? Is it just to get fans to click on it because it's a superhero series? Because that's the wrong reason to do it. Um, anyway, yeah, it was okay. I don't know that I'd watch a second season, to be totally honest. The problem is there are positives. I thought it was well acted. Um, the audio description on this is extremely solid, especially when we're talking about in terms of ethnic representation. The race of everybody in this show. However, I've always said that the racial representation in shows where the leads are black is always better than the shows in which the leads are white because they don't immediately let you know that they're white. What I like to do, for example, is I'm in a situation, I don't want to tell you what I do for a living, but I always like to start off conversations, and I look how I look. And even though I'm a gay film critic, that uh, I'm obviously still, I look like a man, you know? People are gonna look at me. I usually don't have to use pronouns. Um, but whenever I have an opportunity to get people to introduce each other in a situation in which I'm in, I usually give my pronouns because I find that it's easier for somebody else later on down the line if I start that. I know we're living in a world of pronouns, right? Everybody's just losing their fucking minds. Anyway, it's a lot easier for me to do it, uh, and to start that conversation. So I don't have a problem doing it. So when I'm not marginalized in that way. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not the minority in the room, but I want to open it up for people who might be, so that way we've gotten around the room and we've normalized it. So that way it doesn't feel like somebody's like coming out to us. and waving a flag and being like, "Hi, I'm different." It's just going through pronouns. Here, and that's what I want for other shows. I want other shows that don't have black leads to start being used to identifying all their characters. Um, there was a show that I watched recently, I can't remember what it was, and they said, and it used a person of color is with a person of color, and I was like, huh, what color? Can you not tell? Then I would go with biracial, you know? It was very interesting to me to see, like, that sort of very, and it's a show with white leads. So it was a very odd choice. Um, so yeah, it's something I think about a lot, uh, in terms of representation, in terms of finding representation, and in terms of helping people be less marginalized, and holistically, what is it that we can do better? And this show's doing it right. Adrenaline Studios did it right. I like the narration here. I like the audio description. Um, Again, it's Adrenaline, so I'm not really familiar with their team, because I'm not really familiar with them. But if I hear that Adrenaline is doing something again, I'm not going to be like, ugh, Adrenaline. I feel like they did something recently, but I can't put a finger on it. You know what I'm saying? Like, can't put what was it? So I think I've heard them like one other time before, because it's not like I was like, oh, there's an Adrenaline Studios. I was like, oh, Adrenaline. What else have they done? You know, it was more of that. It was like, oh God, I feel like I've done something. Um, but I don't hear them enough. So, which means they usually, a lot of companies tend to work with the same people, and it means I don't hear them. I don't hear their talent enough and know their writers and their work. So I'm leaning to say use them more, because I think this was well done. And I don't know that I'd watch a second season of it. And it's just because I like my superhero things to have a little bit of an ounce, just a sliver of fun to them, just like a little bit. And this series felt like it could have done without the powers entirely, which is not the point of a superhero show. It's if in season 2, if they just lost their powers and this just became like a show about gangs in London, I'd be like, oh, I guess I'll watch that. But as it is, it doesn't really fill me up, in terms of being what it says it is. It's just a thing with a gimmick, and which is sad because the representation is great and the acting is solid, but just on the other side of it, the conception, the production slash direction, not great. You know, find the fun. If you're gonna give somebody a power to do something cool, let them do something cool with it. Not just like murder other rival gang members. That can't be. You can't get a bunch of like 10-year-olds in a room and be like, what would you do with your superpower? And be like, I'd murder my rival gang members. Like, no, you wouldn't. You do something else. Like, there has to be something fun that these guys would do with their powers. And they all seem like hesitant or scared of their powers. And like, they don't want to go try it. They don't want to do anything with it. And it's so weird. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'm going to give season 1 of Supacell, I'm going to give it a C plus. In general, it's well acted enough, and there are stories here. It's just it kind of doesn't deliver on the promise, I don't think, of being something that really belongs in the superhero genre. It feels like it's an afterthought to them. A couple of cool uses, mostly with the invisible guy. I would say like 90% of the cool uses are with one power. So, again, there are 4 other people with powers. So, yeah. Anyway, that's it. Um, Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And I will see you guys on the other side.